there's another part of the customer story that I'd like you to talk about, because I know you've got some points of view on it, and that's this whole thing about moving from this idea of commodities and, how companies can really provide a better product by really thinking much more broadly about what customers want. I mean, what's your take
my smart aleck at some level, because it's so simplistic, but I believe it, is commodity is a state of mind. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful news is we have lots of stories we can tell and lots of examples that have come along. We do live in a service economy. We do not live in a manufacturing economy. And manufacturers aren't manufacturers. If you look inside an automobile plant today, you work for Ford. There were mostly people, and now they're all machines.
Right.
And particularly in the last 5 or 10 years, the sophistication of the robots, they can do the very sexy work now, not just slap paint on the car. Not that was ever easy either. And so the answer is the United States has 20% of our GDP is manufacturing, which is kind of what it's been for a long time. But there are no people.
Yeah.
And all the people who do work in a manufacturing company are service people.
Right.
They're engineers, they're accountants, they're marketers, and so on and so forth. And so, it's increasingly finding ways to be helpful. As I said, I've got examples by the score. I mean, to do kind of a reverse example, I just wrote something on this, and I started out with the fact that Hewlett-Packard paid $14 billion to buy EDS. And the reason they did that is everybody else in the game has been, adding the same kinds of services. And so, and I think it's equally true for small companies.
Yep.
And I hate to, use myself as an example, but there are people who say that I invented the management guru market, which I think is nonsense on the one hand, but on the other hand, if I did, there was only one when I started.
Yeah,
now there
there's
are a lot.
A lot more, yes.
And so at the age of 68,
Yeah.
I am obsessed by differentiation.
Right.
And just a very practical example that probably would be comprehensible to people and they could find their own analog is you hire me to do a speech to your 1,000 members, and about 2 years ago, we purposefully started adding what we called an executive session. Okay. And whether it's a 7-hour speech or whether it's a 50-minute speech, I will throw in on the side some meeting where it's your top people or your top customers or your top members, and we'll sit around the circle and it won't be another speech. We'll just chat.
Yes.
And to my amazement, I don't know if it's my amazement or not, but I find it hilarious when 2 weeks later, it irritates me. 2 weeks later when I get the feedback, they like the executive session better than my speech that I had slaved over for 2 months. But, and I think that's often the case, that when you add, and I won't call it bells and whistles, I hate, because that's a substantive piece. It's the work directly with, with senior client members. Yeah. But I think very often those add-ons, the classic case that is used way beyond me with a big retailer is Best Buy. Right. There was a little teeny service company near Minneapolis, St. Paul called what did they call themselves? The LAN Installation Company. Right. LAN is an LAN. Yeah.
Local Area Network.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the guys who ran it happened to live across the road from one of the guys who wrote the Experience Economy book. Yeah. And so the first thing they decided to do was change the name from LAN Installation Company to the Geek Squad. Yeah. And to paint their trucks accordingly and do their uniforms.
Which is what they are, by the way.
Absolutely, which is exactly what they are. And they get off on it. Yeah. And the market share in this area grew from, 3% to 30%. Best Buy, the electronics folks, thought this is interesting. Maybe we'll contract with these people in some cases to give us a little bit of help. Okay. So that's step 2. Step 3, Best Buy said, this is cool, and they bought the Geek Squad.
Right.
Step 4,
Right.
which is the real argument I'm making, is the Geek Squad became the lead part of the corporate strategy for an enormous electronics retailer who put some of their competitors like Circuit City out of business. But it's just, five guys in a tin shack, change their uniforms and call themselves the Geek Squad, and 10 years and 3 iterations later, they're the driving force in a very significant company. So, this little quote-unquote service add-on can in fact become the tail that wags the dog.
It's almost, well, to bring in another point that we generally connect with this whole customer experience thing, and that is to say that becomes the great customer experience, as per the Geek Squad in this example, becomes the brand.
Yep.
It becomes a thing that makes us different, special,
Absolutely.
and that actually people will say, you want to go to them because that's what they stand for.
Right.
It's almost like, it's a back to front way of thinking of brand, I think, isn't it? But
I think that, and I think it's, per an earlier part of our discussion, it's because manufacturing plants don't have any people in them anymore. I mean, to some extent, and I think you're exactly right on. I will argue until I'm blue in the face that I understand the sex appeal, but the real reality is very low-end cars work shockingly well.
Yes, exactly.
The real reality is the Kia works just about as well as the Mercedes, and sometimes even a little bit better because the Mercedes is so sophisticated that things break down.
Yeah, it's too clever.
And so, and part of the, part of what you're talking about is a cause for applause.
Yeah.
We found out, and the Brits and the Americans probably were, not near the top of the heap on this.
Yeah.
We all started working on quality in the late 70s, and guess what? It worked.
Yeah.
But guess what? Everything works.
Yes.
You no longer expect an air conditioner to break down. You no longer, I mean, I don't know about you, and I'm a lot older than you. I don't know how to change a spare tire. And I bet you if you looked at my childhood, meaning age 16 to 35 or 40, I've still got cuts and scrapes from, standing practically in the middle of the highway.
Yeah.
So in a world where quote unquote everything works, then how are you going to differentiate? And it will be services. Pure and simple. And I believe, just to put a little asterisk, not make it the centerpiece of the discussion, that's also going to be true relative to the Chinese and others. So, somebody's saying recently, Chinese wages are growing at about 17% a year, and if you remember your maths and how fast compound things grow, like the rest of the world, they're already using the Vietnamese as their low-cost source. So the Chinese are not going to have a labor advantage for more than 10 or 20 years, and in fact, a lot of countries are starting to pull back some of their I don't want to suggest they're not critically important, but what I'm saying is that they are looking for differentiation. They don't want to be the world's sweatshop.
So really, on this whole thing about customers, is this a place we should be investing when times
it's
are
a
so
lot
tight?
like the people thing. The fact that you and I have been saying it for 25 years doesn't mean it's happened.
No.
Rick and I had a conversation about some of the people issues, and the percentage of time that the average harried boss spends on people stuff. I'm afraid that needle has only wiggled. We have our Bransons and we have our Southwests and we have our wonderful examples, but I'm not sure in the average car dealer with 75 employees or the average big company, the needle has wiggled, frankly, very much. And I think the same thing is true with the customer stuff.
Right.
We're doing a lot of things better, and the quality thing is true, but in terms of, a term that we've used and others have used, in terms of true customer intimacy, really having the customer be part of the family, I don't think it's come all that far in a lot of cases. And I think it's not, to kind of half contradict myself, I think it doesn't automatically come with these new services added either.
No.
To some extent, we sell you that service.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Tom.